I want to introduce this morning Dr Jim Salinger. He is a New Zealand climate scientist who previously headed the National Institute of Water and Atmospheric Research, or NIWA, which was a Crown Research Institute of New Zealand. Jim is a prolific communicator and has received several awards, including the Nobel Peace Prize in 2007, awarded to the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change, to which he was a contributor, and other honours for the understanding of climate change. He is here to talk about his new book, Living in a Warmer World, as Jim brings together some of the world's leading scientists to find out how a changing climate will affect our planet in a fast-coming future. And so I want to say thank you very much, Jim, for wanting to come in, because you have produced a book and we are changing everything, are we not?
Yes, we are, and the purpose of drawing essays from leading experts in their field around the world was to document how we're warming, so document the changes, but look at what has happened to date to things like wildlife, coral reefs, our glaciers, agriculture, whether it's wheat, viticulture, pastures and livestock, and in the area of human health and heat waves. So the idea was to document what had happened as of up to 2010 and to look ahead to the end of the century.
We've got this battle going on between the denialists who are now calling us alarmist, and I'm just wanting to get really clear on this, bearing in mind you're getting more and more information. And then Leighton Smith here on News Talk ZB, he has 250,000 listeners nationwide, and he would be your greatest nemesis on New Zealand airwaves, Jim. He's talking to the whole country, and he ridicules anybody talking about global warming. And my challenge is to the scientific fraternity in New Zealand, we've got to do something better than this. Ian Wishart of Investigate magazine, he sold huge numbers of books on aircon, and I mean, it just took over the airwaves. How can the scientific fraternity get their story across?
Well, the first thing I'd make with these contrarians and denialists, and I can say this because I'm Jewish, they're basically, their behaviour is like Holocaust denial. There's so much evidence. But I would ask you, if you had a heart problem, would you go to a dentist?
No, definitely not.
Well, these people have absolutely no expertise in the field. The climate system, because everybody thinks they understand weather and they see it going on and it's a matter of a little knowledge is dangerous, they also think they understand the climate system. Well, the climate system is complex. To get to where I am today, I obviously did a BSc honours, then a PhD, so you add up the number of years. Effectively, I'm doing 8 years, then you do 2 years postdoc, you're doing a 10-year apprenticeship. So why on earth would 250,000 people choose to listen to a dentist on their heart problems? This is what we're talking about. We're talking about the planet. I do not know. Everybody seems to have an opinion.
Yes. Tell me, geoengineering evidently was mentioned.
Not in my book.
Oh, not in your book.
No.
By the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change.
That would be in Working Group 3.
Yes.
And I'm not aware of the contents of that report. Comes out next year. I'm not too much into technical fixes because...
Good, I'm glad to hear that,
because
Jim.
Really it is sort of putting humans above nature, and we're better to work with nature rather than try and disturb the system either more. We're doing this huge experiment. We don't know where it's going to end, and what we need to do is prevent a planet that's going to get too hot.
Yes, well, Jim, I like what you're saying, particularly from the standpoint of, you mentioned holistic, having a look at from holistic viewpoint, having many of the disciplines integrating all their knowing into a greater whole. And this comes back to general systems theory, and Gerald Weinberg is the current person who's wanting to have a look at things in the sum of the whole parts, working for the benefit of one greater system.
Yes, well, that's what happens when we start looking at the climate system. we start integrating more and more. We go to the geochemistry, we go to the gases, we go to the biological systems, because they're all integrated in, and therefore to understand the climate system better, you have to take a very holistic approach anyway.
Now, there's just one question, Jim, and it's been thrown at me for the last 5 or 6 years, and I've got so many emails and pictures. With geoengineering, what is the story with chemtrails, or you see chemtrails in the sky?
Oh, yes, contrails.
Contrails.
Now, they're basically what happens is, as aircraft fly, they will stir up the air in the high atmosphere, and of course they're at 30 or 40,000 feet. And when they do that, what is happening by disturbing the atmosphere, they're turning water vapour into ice, because up there the temperatures are something like minus 55. And you have super cooled water vapour, and if the particles there and you disturb it, they'll form ice. And contrails actually are really ice clouds. At high altitudes, they will hold in a bit of the Earth's heat, so they will have a very minor warming effect, but it's not huge.
Because I've just been up to the States, and I happen to be sitting in the backyard of this place, and these contrails were sitting in the sky for hours.
Yes.
How does that happen?
Well, they do, because if you've got the right atmospheric conditions, you're turning water vapour into ice, and it's the ice that you see, and they don't, once you've disturbed the water vapour and it's turned into ice, and it's at minus 50 or 55, they're not suddenly going to, in this case, they'd sublimate back into water vapour.
It didn't used to happen years ago. I flew as international flight crew for Air New Zealand for 17 years, Jim.
Yeah.
And I used to look at aeroplanes, and the contrails would disappear within minutes. These seem to stay for hours, and there's a lot of photographic evidence.
Okay, well, I'm not up on the science, but all I can do is speculate.
Okay.
And I just say there might be more moisture up in the stratosphere to keep them there.
Right. I've just had people flood me with stuff talking about nanoparticles and...
I see. I don't have a lot of knowledge in this area, so
okay,
that's just speculation.
Yes. It was aluminium and barium that they had in. All I'm doing as a presenter, wanting to be able to ask, because we need to just keep asking questions.
For clouds to form, you do need some sort of condensation nuclei, and maybe with those little particles up there, that forms a nucleus for which an ice droplet can crystallise around.
Okay.
But again, that's from my not so good knowledge of cloud physics.
Very good. Finally, the vexing and arcane concerns about chemtrails and geoengineering that are filling the skies of North America and other countries globally. That there is an increasingly ardent call by people and groups of citizens, especially across America, that the atmosphere is being clouded by long stretching chemtrails from horizon to horizon is gathering momentum. Is there a covert operation to curtail global warming by spraying nanoparticles into the upper atmosphere to reflect sunlight back into space, this being an emergency measure to halt global warming and overheating?